This episode of the Nerf Herder Council is brought to you by Audible. Visit audibletrial.com/NHC for your 30-day trial and a free audiobook download.
I'm Kevin Thompson. I'm Chubray from Return of the Jedi. You're listening to the Nerf Herder Council.
Why, you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking Nerf herder.
You can't use that word. Only we can use that word.
Used in trailers, but it was never intended for the movie. I think it was just like literally on the day. I think Felicity was standing there, and it just looked like a great shot, and Gareth just wanted to get it. But I don't think he ever had a place for it in the movie.
You're tuned in to the Nerf Herder Council, your source for Star Wars opinion, conversation, and debate. Featuring your hosts, JT.
Stormtrooper armor deflects everything except Orback hooves. They're like a horse version of Thomas the Tank Engine.
AJ.
Yeah, Rebels is a lot like our show, where we think we have a good idea and then it just fails in execution.
Steve.
The vacuum of space does crazy things to your beehole out there, man.
On this episode of the Nerf Herder Council, we discuss IGN's recent live watch party for Rogue One with writers Gary Whitta and Chris Weitz.
This is the Nerf Herder Council.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Nerf Herder Council. I am your host, JT. With me are AJ and Steve. Hopefully you're there. We're doing our second Skype episode. You guys there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. What about you, AJ? Uh-oh, he's not there.
No, just kidding.
Okay. Oh, you're not helping Steve with this at all. That was a dick move.
No, because AJ's the one that puts it together, remember?
So he's screwing himself.
That's all right. I put forth all this effort and forgot to close the door to my office, so you're going to hear Ace clacking around and probably come in at some point.
That's okay.
Well, just wait till a long-winded sentence just wait for a long-winded sentence and then just go shut the door really quick.
Yeah, exactly. So real quick piece of really cool news, and then we'll get to what we wanted to talk about. But did you guys see that Disney Plus is releasing a behind-the-scenes program about The Mandalorian on May 4th? It's like an 8-episode thing.
8 episodes, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I wonder what it kind of, the title makes it seem like it's just like art, but I guess like Jon Favreau is hosting it, and he will be kind of going through a whole bunch of behind the scenes stuff, like interviewing people and all sorts of things. That's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I saw that on Twitter earlier, and I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to end up watching that thing. That's for sure.
Yeah, what's the title of that thing again?
I don't remember. It's what is it? Like the art or something. I don't know. The way that it was phrased, it really kind of sounded to me like they were just going to be showing like all the concept art. It's just going to be like, hey, look at these cool concept pieces that we have. Like, okay, what else you got?
It's just going to be like 8 hours of concept, like stills from the storyboards or something like that.
Right.
Based on the end credits of every episode, it looks like we've pretty much seen all the concept art. It was in the show.
Pretty much.
Like, that was the most accurate to screen concept art I have ever seen.
Yeah. Oh, here it is. Okay, so it's called Disney Gallery, The Mandalorian. I think maybe Disney Gallery is a show that it's like a series of theirs, and this one just focuses on The Mandalorian.
Something like that. Yeah, I'm looking at IGN, and it says it's a documentary based on and around the production of The Mandalorian. So it just seems like it's all behind the scenes stuff.
IGN generally does good work, and last night happened to be a perfect example of them doing good work, because last night they had a live watch party for Rogue One that AJ and I sat in on, and it was with the writers of the movie. And I was a little bit late to the party, so I know Gary Whitta was on there and Chris Weitz. and there were two other guys. I think there was a host and somebody else, but I was stupid. There's a thing on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen that said sync with us. And I was like, okay. So I thought they were going to play the movie and the guys were going to talk over it. But no, it turns out you have to turn the movie on yourself. And then the YouTube thing was like basically like a commentary track. So I eventually got it synced up to within less than a second, which was pretty cool. But yeah, it was awesome because, they had, like I said, Gary Whitta talked a lot, and there was some really interesting stuff on there. And AJ, you would know better than I do because I don't know this story, but what is the whole like chronology of the writers and all that? Because I always was under the impression that it was, Gareth Edwards directed it, but then there was some big massive problem or problems, and then Tony Gilroy came in and he's the one that fixed everything. But that's not the case from what they were saying in the commentary last night.
Yeah, they really made it sound like it was more collaborative. They gave credit to both guys throughout the movie. So I don't know if that's just them towing the company line or if it was more a case of, productions are never linear. It's not like you begin shooting day one with the intro scene of the movie and then go from there. So it may have just been a case of all the things that they mentioned that Gilroy contributed might have been later on in the production process, but not necessarily later on in the movie.
Yeah, I thought he was like the third one in line because it sounded to me, and I could be wrong on this. So if anybody's listening and I'm wrong, I apologize. I fully admit that I'm not quite sure on the chronology, but Gary Whitta was the original writer, and then Chris Weitz was brought in to rewrite stuff, and then Tony Gilroy rewrote stuff after that. So because the way they were talking was that Gareth Edwards was the director the entire time, and I thought that wasn't the case. So I don't pay. I love behind the scenes, but I don't pay that much attention.
Well, wasn't Gilroy the second unit director?
See, again, I don't know. I never saw a full explanation of the breakdown of how that all worked, but it was definitely super interesting because Steve, what was really cool was that Gary Whitta, one of the first things he said was anybody who can't get into these characters is a complete and total douchebag. And I thought that was really interesting because that means you're a total douchebag.
Well, everybody's entitled to being wrong once in a while.
No, he didn't say that, but they did make comments about, that they wanted to, write characters that people could really get behind in a short space of time. And I thought that was, they completely failed where you're concerned and completely succeeded where I'm concerned. So that was kind of interesting. But I mean, what was, I guess we'll start here. AJ, you took some good notes on this, so you can kind of lead us. But the first thing that I thought was pretty interesting was that the stuff that Gary Whitta wrote, a lot of it was still in the movie, but just in different form and in a different part of the movie. Like if he wrote something for the first third, it ended up in the back third. And it was weird. They did change a lot of what he wrote. I mean, the general ideas were there, but they changed a lot of it. When we see what's actually in the final cut.
Yeah, it sounds like the main parts were there throughout. Like they knew that it was going to be a heist movie of sorts, and obviously an ensemble cast. And he even mentioned that the idea to kill all the characters was his first idea. Because as we discussed, it would be weird if they survived and then play no part in the original trilogy.
Sure.
But as we know, there were drafts where Jin and Cassian in particular survived. And that was apparently, according to Gary Whitta, that was because they didn't think that Disney would be on board with them killing the entire team. So they backed away from their own first instincts, thinking that it wouldn't get through the approval process. And it wasn't until they actually were questioned by Lucasfilm, about that possibility that they actually went back to their original idea again. So I thought that was really interesting that they were afraid that they were being too dark for Disney, and Disney was like, no, make it darker. This doesn't make sense.
Yeah. It's strange to me that, I'm trying to think how to phrase this properly. I don't know. I'll come back to it because I was thinking about the whole, all the characters dying and stuff. But it was just very interesting to me that they always were like, okay, they've got to, they have to die, because the way that Star Wars is anymore, they have so many different outlets to tell different stories that while I think there would have been a segment of the fan base that would have been like, yeah, why aren't these guys in episode 4 or 5 or this, that, and the other? Like, there's also so many other things that they could have gone off and done on like side adventures that it kind of surprised me that they didn't, keep them in there like that. So that was surprising to me. So, the fact that they always wanted to kill them off, it makes total sense, but I was surprised to find that Disney wanted to do that too.
Yeah, that was really surprising. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, speaking of the nonlinear production process, something I don't know if you caught, but Cassian's first scene on the Ring of Kefrine, Gary Whitta said that was actually Tony Gilroy's audition. So it's weird because it's not that big of a deal. Like, yes, okay, that's where the intel gets relayed, but as far as like character development, I never thought it was like that pivotal, but apparently that was one of the last things that they shot. So they were still working on making like the first 10 or 15 minutes of the movie play out the way they wanted at the very end of the production, which is really weird because you think you'd have that pinned down and you'd be working more towards how do you get to the finish line.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that came through in the fact that they had 3 different guys end up writing on the movie, was that things changed a lot, and it was like kind of like 3 different visions, and like some of each came in and ended up in the final cut. Honestly, I can see why they put that scene on the Ring of Kefrine on there, because I know that when I first saw the movie, I'm like, okay, who is this guy? Like, is he a bad guy? Like, what? Who is this? And then he's in the Rebel Alliance, and I was like, well, wait a minute, like, why did he do that evil thing then? Why did he just blow this crippled guy away? Like, what the heck is that? So I think I could see why they put it in there, because it really kind of sets the tone for, you don't know what this guy's going to do. And, because he doesn't really do anything else that's nefarious. I mean, they tell him to go kill Jyn Erso's father, Galen Erso, but without having background that he'll do whatever it takes, even if it's kind of slimy, you're just like, okay, well, he's going to bail on it, whatever. But when he goes out there to kill Galen Erso, because you've already seen that other scene, you're like, oh crap, is he really going to like off this guy? So I kind of see why they did it like that. So it's a smart decision. See, Steve, so you didn't see any of this? Your internet crapped out, you said?
Yeah, it kind of disappeared around 7:00 last night, and Lord only knows when it came back. I just know I woke up and I magically had internet again.
You are not. You've crapped on Rogue One so many times about not liking the characters that your internet was like, no, you're not going to watch this.
Yeah, maybe.
You disrespectful ass.
Maybe it saved me.
No, see, it was cool.
No,
it was cool
I really do like the movie and everything. Like I said, it's just it always goes back to the not like I like to have more character development. I like to know my characters, and having them show up and die in the same movie just didn't do it for me. That's all.
Do you think if you would have seen this last night and heard about why they wrote the characters in a certain way and the interactions and everything, that it might have helped you to kind of identify with them a little better?
It's possible, but at the same point, like, I get what you were saying too, that it makes sense because of the timeline and everything. It's like you couldn't have them survive and then have everybody question where they're at in episode 4. So it would have made them, it would have forced them to make another movie, even though that wouldn't have been a bad thing, or it would have forced us to do what we complain about all the time and drive you into comic books or something else to figure out what happened to everybody. And it's just kind of a pain in the ass. So it makes sense. I totally understand why. It's just, for me, it didn't hit me very well knowing that they were all going to die at the end of the movie when I just got introduced to them. That's all.
Did you go into it thinking they were all going to die?
I expected it to be that for sure, but at the same point, I really didn't expect myself not to, I don't want to say not enjoy it, but like I can't get past the fact that I just didn't care, I guess, about anybody when it was all said and done. And you think about it when you watch all the other movies, you cared about what happened to Han. You watch episode 9, you actually cared about what happened to Ben and Rey and everything like that. But, after when you go in knowing that people are going to die the second you walk into the theater, it's hard for me, I guess, to sit there and give a crap about them as a character if I know they're going to get introduced and die in the same movie.
Yeah, I went in. I didn't think they were all going to die. Like that's such a non-Star Warsian thing to do.
I can see that. I mean, I guess I was just picking the timeline as well, going, okay, there's nobody in this movie other than Vader and Tarkin that we know were in the original trilogy. So I was like, I kind of just assumed everybody we were getting introduced to was going to die.
Okay. Yeah. See, I just didn't, and I should have known, but going into the movie, knowing it's about getting the Death Star plans, and the Rebel Alliance had won their first victory, you got to assume that it's going to be pretty much a suicide mission. But I never connected 2 and 2 because again, my brain was just going, oh boy, it's a new Star Wars movie. All right.
I'm glad I wasn't the only one doing that, because I totally did the same thing. Like, even watching the movie for the first time, I didn't even realize that everybody was dead until pretty much the credits rolled. I was like, holy crap! Like, nobody made it out on that.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that I liked, AJ, and then we'll get back to your notes, but I really hope that they do this with other movies, because it was so cool. Like, I don't know how you had your balance, AJ. Like, I had a little bit of the movie in my right ear, and then I had the commentary in my left. So I had a really nice balance of it. So it wasn't like I had the movie muted. Oh, I've already seen this. But it was really cool because it was like watching it with a fresh set of eyes, but still having that familiarity. And I know that these things look great because they're Star Wars, and I just get so immersed in the universe that it's like, okay, this is what Star Wars looks like. But I really like that they were like, oh, this shot right here is so beautiful. And it's like when it's pointed out to you and you really look at it and search around for what's on the screen, you're like, holy crap, yeah, that's really cool. That is pretty unique. So the fact that they pointed out certain bits of artistry in the filmmaking, it's something that I never really look at because I'm just so immersed in the story and the universe that I don't notice it. And I thought that was cool. They pointed a lot of that out last night.
Yeah, that was it was really cool the way they did that, because as writers, they don't really have any control over that part. That's where the director comes in, and the art department and stuff like that. So for them to call out the other people on the production instead of just tooting their own horn for 2.5 hours, that was really cool of them. And I think for them it's got to be kind of a thrill though, because as they write these scenes, they might have a visual in their mind, but they don't know how it's going to turn out on the screen. So a lot of times, like they even said that that they'll write something, and then the first time they see the finished product is in a theater with an audience, like everybody else does. So it's fresh to them because it's been so long since they've written the stuff, and they don't know what kind of changes it's gone through or what the finished product looks like. Because even if they visit the set, they still are only seeing part of the production.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And they even said, like, Gary Whitta was talking about how they didn't really have the battle scenes and the fights written out. It was just kind of there. It was like, okay, we knew a big set piece would happen here. But he said a couple times, like, he had an idea of what he hoped it would turn out looking like. For example, like that, the space battle over Scarif, he wanted to do like an homage to Return of the Jedi. He said he had a lot of Return of the Jedi in his initial script. And he said that when he first saw, that space battle, he was like, holy crap, I couldn't believe how great it looked. It looked even better than I pictured it would be. And, so, I mean, he spoke to that exact point. So, good observation there. So what other notes do you have?
Well, like you said, Return of the Jedi, of course, I geeked out at that, being my personal favorite.
I never noticed that in the shuttle when he pointed out like the whole shuttle and the code and
yeah,
I was like, God, how did I miss that? Steve, what they were talking about is how Gary Whitta said that like I just said, they put a lot of Return of the Jedi as his favorite.
Right. He says it's the best space battle in all of Star Wars.
Yeah. And so he put a whole bunch of like Easter eggs and homages to that movie in his first writing, his first draft for Rogue One. And one of them was when they were flying to Scarif on the stolen Imperial shuttle, that he's like, yeah, that's like totally a huge nod of mine to Return of the Jedi. You've got the stolen Imperial shuttle, you've got the ensemble cast, you've got the, the code that you're hoping works,
Right.
you got the big shield. And I was like, holy crap, how did I never ever catch that? Because when it's pointed out to you, it's so obvious.
Oh, right. Yeah. It does that sometimes. There's so many obvious things that you never think about that when somebody finally points it out to you, not only do you feel like an idiot for missing it, but now every single time you watch it from now on, that thing's going to be so glaring obvious to you.
Right.
You're never not going to notice that ever again when you watch that movie.
It's like when you buy a car because nobody else has one, and as soon as you drive it off the lot, you see them like every other vehicle is like the one.
Right, absolutely.
No, that's how you do a good homage, though, because we love this movie and we love Return of the Jedi, and we didn't even put that together. It's compared to like sequel trilogy stuff where it's just slammed right in your face, like, hey, you remember this? I like that this was actually nuanced in that way. The other cool thing that he pointed out about that final sequence was Return of the Jedi. The reason they held it up like that was because he said that it's a three layered story going on simultaneously. You've got the space battle going on above the planet, you've got the ground battle going on the planet, and you've got that personal battle going on. In this case, it's not Luke and Vader, it's Krennic and Jyn. But you still got, 3 layers of action going on simultaneously, and all plot threads feeding into one final outcome. And
yeah,
it's crazy because like the thing I love about watching these sorts of things is they're conscious decisions that the writers make, but we as audience members just know if we like it or don't. We don't know why. So like having it pointed out like that, and it really makes sense now when he draws those parallels to Return of the Jedi. I'm like, oh yeah, that is why that's so cool, and why that felt like bigger and fresh and different from A New Hope was because in A New Hope you just had the trench run. That was all that was going on there. And then Return of the Jedi had, another battle above the Death Star, but there was 2 other things going on with it that, heightened the stakes.
I never thought of it that way. It's a good point. It's kind of weird. Like New Hope is the first movie, Empire's the second movie, and Jedi's the third. In A New Hope, like you said, you've got, the trench run going on. That's the only thing. In Empire, you have 2 things, because you've got the Vader-Luke battle, and then you've got, them dealing with the Han Solo and Carbonite crap and trying to escape Cloud City. And then you've got 3 things in Jedi. I mean, I never thought about that. So they just kept adding to it and making it bigger and bigger. I wonder if that's a conscious decision, because, I mean, that's one thing I learned last night about just movie making in general. Like the amount of thought that goes behind every single tiny, small detail is absolutely fascinating. I mean, they really do nitpick this stuff down to the tiniest little degree, and that was really interesting to me.
Yeah, it was really cool. Like they were talking about even details that don't make it onto the screen that just help inform the details that do. Like, or sometimes they just work out in cool ways for visual reasons. Like Gary Whitta was saying that Jin's mom his original concept was that she might have been like a former Jedi, like a Jedi in hiding, because she gives that necklace with the Kyber crystal to Jyn, and they were thinking that Lyra might have been a former Jedi, and that was like the remnant of her lightsaber crystal. And then they dropped the whole Jedi concept, but they kept the crystal, and that was like a cool little symbol throughout the movie. Even though the reason for it being there no longer existed, it still like lent a detail to the movie that really like helped play out through the whole thing, all the way up through the idea that the Death Star laser was powered by the same source as the Jedi's lightsabers.
Yeah, that was another cool tidbit, how they were talking about like, how kyber crystals are like the source of a Jedi's power, but it's also the thing that's powering this weapon that's going to, annihilate the whole universe. It's kind of like a yin and yang thing. Is that, again, I mean, so many of those things were just so cool. So, all right. So what other notes did you take?
Well, I wanted to bring this one to the table because this one really caught me off guard when they said that, according to Mads Mikkelsen, the actor who plays Galen Erso, he views Galen Erso as a villain. Like, he doesn't think that planting the flaw in the design was enough to reclaim that character. So according to him, by designing the Death Star in the first place, the guy was still a villain regardless of whatever he did at the end. What do you guys think about that?
I'll let Steve talk to that one since he didn't see it. He can actually comment on this one, like without having seen the.
I don't really see that. I mean, everybody's got redeeming qualities. Isn't that kind of what happens mostly to bad guys in these movies, anyways? I mean, Kylo had the redeeming quality. Vader even had his redeeming quality. Isn't that kind of just how it works?
Well, having a redeeming quality is one thing, but do you think like Vader was officially like no longer a villain because he chucked the Emperor down a hole, or did all the bad stuff he did before then make him still a villain?
Well, he used to be a dick, but isn't that like the fourth quarter conversion to the light side? Like, isn't that why he faded away and became like a Force Ghost Jedi guy again and stuff? Wouldn't that insinuate him being a good guy, not a bad guy anymore?
A Force Ghost Jedi guy. A glowy blue thing. That
a blue guy in a robe.
We're so eloquent with our speech on this show.
Right, yeah.
I mean, I didn't see any Sith turning into blue guys wearing robes, did you?
No, I did not. No. I mean, me personally, when they brought the point up about him saying, I thought he was a villain, it's like, well, I understand where he's coming from. And I guess you'd have to look at it from the perspective of his choices were die or do what he's told. And he chose the easy way out, which is, I don't want to die. And he just ended up building a freaking flaw into it. So I guess I can see where he's coming from, but it's, if he is a villain, he is a very, very different type of villain than any that we've ever seen before. That's like that. It would almost be like saying that Anakin Skywalker is a villain all the time just because, he turns into Darth Vader. I don't think the end result of what you do defines everything that came before it. And, again, Anakin turned not because he was trying to just be the most evil guy in the galaxy. He was trying to save the life of the person he loved the most. And, Galen Erso, I mean, his choices were death or do what you're told. But in doing what he was told, he also made it to where this thing could be stopped and destroyed. So I wouldn't consider him a villain. I would more, and I can't say he's like a straight good guy because again, he did wuss out.
Right.
But I would say more a victim of circumstance would be a better way to describe it. I think.
Yeah, I never really got a villain vibe off of him. I thought his explanation in the recording to Jin pretty much spelled out everything. He's like, look, I knew they were going to build it without me, but at least if I was part of the process, I could get in the way, build a backdoor in, I could do something to undermine them. Whereas if I was out of the picture, then it was just going to get finished and everyone would be screwed. So that seems very heroic to me because he threw himself under the bus. He's to, serve the greater good.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. That's exactly the way that I saw it too. He's like, well, it's a very analytical approach to the situation. It's like, okay, well, one way or the other, the end result of this is going to be there will be a Death Star, whether I'm involved or not. The Death Star is going to exist. So what can I do to stop this? I'm not going to be able to stop this thing getting made. So what can I do to stop it after the fact? And he figured out a way to do that. So I completely agree with you on that one, AJ. I see it the exact same way.
Yeah, I wonder if this is a case of the filmmakers and the editors and stuff framing the shots and doing the takes in such a way that maybe the actor was thinking something different, but the way they cut the footage together made it seem completely something else. Because I never got any sort of a villain vibe from him. It always seemed very, like you said, victim of circumstance, where he was trapped. Like they hunt him down in the beginning and say, you're coming with us whether you like it or not. And so he gets abducted into the program after he already tried to escape and stop it. And then they even wrote that, prequel book, The Catalyst, that further explains that as soon as he realized that the research he was doing was going to be weaponized, he immediately bailed out. And that's why they had to go track him down on, what's that planet that they're on?
Oh, dude, not Lamu, is it?
Yeah, I think that is the first one. It's Iceland. Who cares?
Yeah. I'm terrible with the planet names in the modern movies. I know all of them in the older ones, but in the Disney era stuff, I'm bad with it. I know Edu and stuff like that, and Wobani and all that. But
just make up something and put 2 U's at the end of it. You're probably pretty close to whatever the hell the name of it is.
Yeah,
right.
The cool thing, though, speaking of that whole setup, Saw Gerrera was kind of always in the picture because they had this idea of presenting somebody who was against the Empire, but not necessarily with the rebel force officially. And that was one contribution that Lucasfilm did, because they always had that archetype in mind, but they didn't specifically say like, hey, let's go find a character from the Clone Wars and bring him in. But they were like, look, we need this like guerrilla character that is fighting for the same goal, but not on the same side necessarily as the Rebel Alliance. And Lucasfilm, I think that's where the story group came in. They offered it up. They're like, well, we've got this character from Clone Wars that kind of fits the bill. The one thing they always knew is they always wanted Forrest Whitaker to play it, which is weird that they had this actor in mind for this character before they even knew who the character was going to be. But, I mean, anymore, I can't unsee it. Like, Forrest Whitaker just nails that part so well.
Yeah, that is one of my most underutilized Star Wars characters. Anytime I think about a list like that, it always starts with Qui-Gon Jinn and Saw Gerrera. Something about those characters. I could just give me a whole series with those guys just going at it. Like, so one of the other things I thought was really interesting, Steve, this actually, in a way, it's kind of funny, but speaking of all the detail that they do and the research and everything, when they went to make Tarkin, and they had to digitally recreate him and stuff, they had obviously the footage it was in the movie and takes that weren't used from episode 4, but they actually went back and found a facial cast, a mold that was made of Peter Cushing in 1984. He was in that movie Top Secret with Val Kilmer, and they had to give him like a giant eye. And he had to have a facial cast taken in order to make the prosthetic for the giant eye. And John Knoll actually hunted that down and found this facial cast of Peter Cushing from 1984 and did like he filled it back in and did like a 3D model of it. And that's what they used to do the digital recreation of Tarkin. I was like, who thinks of this stuff?
Well,
I mean,
that explains why Tarkin looked so good and why Leia looked so bad when they digitally did her.
Yeah. I mean, that... And it's
dude,
funny.
Lord knows we all talked about it too before Rogue One came out, because none of us really thought that they nailed by any means the digital recreation of Carrie Fisher. And we knew that Tarkin was going to be in Rogue One, and we were like, I don't know about that. But then when he turned around in the movie, it was kind of like a, holy shit, you guys did a great job on this thing.
Yeah.
That explains everything then, if they had a legitimate face mold that they can make a 3D model out of.
Yeah, I mean, but who thinks of this stuff? Like, okay, we got to do this actor guy, and then they're like, okay, what other movies were they in? Did they have any prosthetics? Like, oh my gosh, it's like just the level of detail at which these guys just think is, it's fascinating.
Yeah, that's why those guys make a lot of money, and we're making podcasts right now. So
yeah, exactly. They'd be like, hey, write a Star Wars story. I'd be like, sweet. Okay, it's going to have the Millennium Falcon. Han Solo came back to life. I want a lot of lightsabers and Jedi kicking ass.
We send our paperwork to Disney, and it's literally 4 sentences written on a napkin, and we ran out of ideas.
Like we made previs. It's like notebook paper with stick figures going pew pew.
Here, we sent storyboard art along with everything to explain it better.
We would make the worst Star Wars movie ever. It would be like, if it was a car, it would be like the Homer from The Simpsons when his brother let him build a car. That would be our Star Wars movie. We'd be like, this is going to be the greatest movie ever. And it comes out, people are like, what in Christ's name? I take back everything I ever said about Disney ruining Star Wars. This ruined Star Wars.
Well, we've already taken Star Wars podcasting down a notch. We might as well do the franchise.
Yeah, right. We're like Hydra. We're taking it down from within. Sorry, I was watching Captain America movies yesterday. That's a whole nother podcast. All right, so what other notes do you have, AJ? I know you said you took a bunch. So,
Well, I love that you got on the Cushing's face thing because I totally wrote that down too. I mean, I just want to know how you even begin that process. Like, how did you even know that there was a mold to be tracked down in the first place?
well,
And then
that's
who do
what
you
I'm saying.
call?
Yeah. That that's what I was saying. It's like, who even thinks of that? Oh, maybe there was a facial mold of this guy who's been dead for over 20 years. like wow, okay. Like Steve said, that's why they're making the big bucks and we're making podcasts.
Yeah, that was absolutely nuts. And there's actually been like a bunch about the whole Tarkin thing that they put out, like right around when Rogue One came out. They were saying like one of the problems that they had was that the lighting on A New Hope was very basic. Like it was a low budget film and it looked it. So one of the problems is the lighting was so drastically improved and different in this movie that even when they got it right, it didn't look right because you'd never seen Peter Cushing lit like that before. So there was a whole bunch of artistry that went into kind of like, with like Digital Yoda too, where they had to like, instead of making him a perfect creature, they had to make him move puppet-like because they had a puppet as the reference. It's weird how like sometimes you have to move away from reality to make something look more real just to match expectations more,
Yep. The other thing that was cool to me was how they were talking about when they, John Knoll brought up the idea of like, let's have Tarkin in this. They were like, well, you can't do that. How are we going to do that? And he flat out said, dude, that's what ILM does. We do impossible stuff. Like stuff that you think can't happen. We find a way. That's what we're here for. That's the whole point of the company. And it's like, wow, all right.
Yeah, the writers even said, they were like, it doesn't make any sense to not have Tarkin in this, given that it's all about the Death Star, and he's like right there in the beginning of Episode 4. So they purposely tried to write him like he's in the shadows, or he's silhouetted, or he's says something off camera. Like they gave all the outs they could to ILM, and John Knoll's like, don't worry about it. Just write him. We'll put it in.
I love that. It's like, because you always, in my head, I'm always like, man, ILM's got to have some huge balls for even attempting some of this stuff. And it turns out that's exactly what they do. They have huge balls and they try, just like, we're going to make it happen. Doesn't matter if it's possible or not. So, it gave me a newfound respect for the prequels, which I already love the prequels, but I just love that notion of we're going to make this happen. Like, we want to see something on the screen, and if it fails, it fails. But God damn it, we're going to try and make this happen. Like, that's cool to me. I love that outlook.
Yeah, the overall theme that I got from this was maybe this is why it feels so much like a classic Star Wars movie. The writers were completely unrestrained. Like, they didn't have to worry about the logistics of making any of their ideas happen. They just had to have the best ideas possible. Like, like we said, Tarkin, well, the guy's dead. We'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. Just write Tarkin if you want Tarkin. Oh, we need Gold and Red Leader in this. All right, we'll make that happen too. I love the way that they got around all this stuff.
I don't even really think they got around it. They just did it. It was like, screw this. We're putting it in, we're putting it in. Like, they said it's okay, so we're putting everything but the kitchen sink in there. I like even stuff like, for some reason I keep missing Chopper. Like, and they pointed that out, and of course he was off the screen by the time I was like, damn it, I missed it again. I heard the General Syndulla, I've heard that one, but then they said the Ghost is parked somewhere in the background on Yavin. I'm like, what? I've never seen that.
I didn't think the Ghost was in it, but yeah, I guess it's probably somewhere. Who knows?
Well, they flat out said that it's parked there at the base on Yavin.
You know what I saw when I was poking around the background of Yavin there? They've got an orange R2 unit walking around, and I want to build that thing now. I know R2 is the classic. I want a Cleveland Browns colored R2 unit. How awesome would that be?
They had one. There was one at Celebration, I think, the one year. There was an orange and brown one. I don't remember if it was specifically for the Browns, but I know I saw it, and I was like, holy crap, it's Browns colors. Because, I don't miss that. But, it was an older version of Browns colors because the orange wasn't quite as orangey. But, but Yeah, I mean, all these different things. And the other thing was that he kind of made reference to Rebels more times than I would have ever thought. I mean, he said there was a few little nods in there to the Rebels cartoon, but I also didn't know it. Didn't he say he worked on that for a couple seasons, Gary Whitta?
He might have had some input because they were making that show while they were making this movie. It was.
I'm almost positive he said. Yeah, I'm almost positive he said he worked on a couple seasons of Rebels. But yeah, so I guess there's more of that in there than it's all subtle, of course, but
I could see that because for the most part, if you look at the overall arc of Rebels, it's kind of Rogue One is almost its culmination, right? Like it leads right up to it, and it's all about the formation of the Rebel Alliance. And Rogue One is all about really the cementing of the Rebel Alliance. That's when the alliance officially like comes to pass.
Yeah, well, it's their first victory. I mean, they actually achieved something, and that was, back to, something that they commented on that was interesting was they said that the Rebel Alliance was splintered before this. It was, just a bunch of systems and leaders and stuff kind of arguing about what needs to be done or what shouldn't be done, this, that, and the other. And they weren't really a cohesive unit. And then this attack on Scarif and the subsequent, procuring of the Death Star plans and what happened that was the the coming together point for the entire rebellion. And it's like, I mean, that I know I said this earlier, but that's why I hope they do this again with other movies, because this sort of thing is just so interesting, because you really look at things in a different way. Like so many things that you don't really think about. And, I mean, like, and that's a perfect example of it. You're like, oh yeah. Like, so the Rebel Alliance was just a bunch of dudes arguing, and then all of a sudden they steal the Death Star plans, and they're like, "Holy crap, we can win!" And then they're a legitimate force to be reckoned with. So,
Dude,
that was
it's just
cool.
like sports teams when they like sign like a big free agent or something, they automatically become fair weather fans and stuff. That's
right. Well,
these guys all sucked, and then they won one time, and they got all cocky about it. They're like, "Hey, we could actually be something important here."
Right. I think your analogy actually works though, because it's like, when you get those teams that go on like a winning streak that aren't, great, like last year, the Buffalo Bills, like they're not great, but I mean, they were, when we played them, they were like 7-2. And I mean, it's like these teams, they get on a winning streak and they just start believing that they're going to win. It's, they come together. It's, I mean, your point is funny, but it's also legitimately serious. That's a real thing. Like, and I think that was on display in Rogue One. So,
yeah, they said
right,
that story point kind of fell in their lap. They said when they decided to blow up Jeddah City with the Death Star, they realized that like that was a moment that the Rebel, not alliance, but all the different Rebel factions could galvanize around. Like it's ironic that the Empire created their own downfall, because without the Death Star, they could have just through sheer attrition just ground out the Rebel insurgents. There was nothing. They weren't united. There was nothing to like bring them together to cause open warfare. But the Death Star was this rallying cry that caused them all to put their differences aside and work as a team. So it wasn't until Jeddah City was destroyed that they really took notice and realized they didn't have a choice and had to work together to do something.
Yeah.
And that, according to them, they just put that in as like a good, like a teaser for the looming threat to understand that like this thing was really that close to completion. And then they realized, oh wait, that could be the actual spark. That could be the defining moment that galvanizes the Rebel Alliance.
Yep. Yeah, it's just, and again, another really cool decision. And then, also you had mentioned the characters that they put in there, like Gold Leader and Red Leader and stuff like that. One of the things they mentioned, Steve, again, is just these little things you just don't think about. They were talking about how, Red Leader was at the Battle of Scarif, and he's, seen the Death Star and what it can do and this, that, and the other. And he made mention of the fact that they were talking about putting Wedge into Rogue One at the Battle of Scarif, but they decided not to because of dialogue that was in episode 4 in the trench run, where Wedge goes, "Look at the size of that thing." And Red Leader's like, "Cut the chatter," Red
right.
2. And they said the
that
line.
one line right there, they were like, "Yeah, we can't put him in the movie because then he'll it'll throw off the I guess
Yeah.
the story arc, I guess, a little bit, that he knew what it was, but then acted surprised by it in episode 4.
Exactly. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. So he said that's why Red 2 just acted like, yeah, let's just blow this damn thing up instead of, getting caught up in how, what the hell it was and how big it was and everything. And why they kept Wedge out of it. And I was like, God bless, man, that is cool as hell. So that was another. I mean, again, there's so many little nuggets in there where you're like, "Oh wow, I never thought of that." I know, I'm definitely going to go back and watch this thing again because I mean, for me, it was really cool because I had my dog up here. We had a couple blankets, and I was just had a whole bunch of cherry Coke cherry Pepsi Zero, and I found out last week because I'm brilliant that my PlayStation 4 will actually play 3D movies.
Nice.
And I've only had a PlayStation 4 for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years and never tried to use it for 3D technology, even though it could do it the whole
maybe
time.
it was in an update and you didn't know it was there before.
Yeah, it was like I looked it up online. It was several years ago, so I'm still
okay.
a moron. but yeah, so I was sitting there watching it in 3D with my dog in my lap and just like relaxing, having some pop and listening to this stuff and learning about. I was like, oh my God, this is like so awesome! Like it was like the perfect nerd night. So I'm definitely gonna watch it again because I want to hear things that I missed or kind of glossed over. So, do you have anything else that you wanted to bring up, AJ?
Yeah. Well, now is our favorite portion of the show. It's the Hate on the Sequel trilogy segment.
Why are we talking about the sequel trilogy and we're talking about Rogue One?
Yeah, I actually noticed a lot of things that they pointed out in how they chose to portray certain things that are the complete opposite of how it was done in the sequel trilogy. And I think this is why those certain story beats fell dead to us in the sequels versus Rogue One. Like
this sounds like a topic for a whole nother show, dude. This is going to lead us down a rabbit hole that I think we should probably get into in another program.
There's only a couple. Don't worry about it. But
All right.
okay, Starkiller. They even mentioned this in the commentary. They were talking about Starkiller Base being a thing, and the reason they really love the scene of Jeddah City getting destroyed. Not only is it just awesome for the action and everything, but it was important that the rebels got to see and experience like what this weapon did. So you compare something like Force Awakens, where Starkiller fires, and these nobodies that you've never been introduced to before just see this giant red flash in the sky, and then on a planet in an entirely other system, you see people go, "Oh man, that's really bad." Or even in A New Hope, where Obi-Wan just kind of like doubles over for a second. He's like, yeah, something awful just happened. But to see it like on the ground, and be like,
no, indigestion.
What? Sorry?
Did a planet blow up? Millions of people die, Obi-Wan? No, indigestion. I got gas or something. Ew. I just watched that today. And
They
I
ask
actually,
Obi-Wan what's wrong, and you just hear him let out a squeaker.
yeah, right. Sorry, I watched that movie literally a couple hours ago, and I noticed that when he did that, he kind of I was like, man, that looked like he had to like fart or something, or he had a bad lunch or something. So, anyways, continue. Sorry,
that was their way of like making the audience really like feel what the characters are feeling, was by putting them on the ground during a Death Star strike. Like I thought that was brilliant because it made for an awesome sequence. And it really made you understand why the characters cared so much about this thing. I don't understand why anybody on Takodana cared or knew about what the hell was going on with Starkiller. Like they just saw some red streak in the sky and they're like, "Oh my God, this is so terrible." Like what? Why? Like it didn't resonate emotionally for me. I don't know about you guys, but I think we talked about that before. It fell flat.
Well, yeah, because it's like, we're going to blow these planets up. And I was like, all right, you blew planets up, but that the Death Star's done that. Why do I care about this planet? Because I mean, at least in episode 4, that's Princess Leia's, home world. That's home to her. You just blew up her home right in front of her face. You made her watch it. Whereas this one's like, oh, we're going to blow up some planets. And you're like, all right, what do those have to do with anything? Which you don't care about that. But then even more so when you find out that that's like the hub of the New Republic. That's like all of the good guys. You're like, well, that might have been information you want to leave in the damn movie.
Right?
like then I'd be like, okay, that matters. Instead, it was some fur-faced dude and a woman and like a couple other people standing there on the balcony like, oh, wow, everything's getting all red. Oh, see you later.
Yeah, so like in Rogue One, you actually spend some time on the planet and you care a little bit about the people because you see them and you see the lives that they're leading. And so when that gets destroyed, it actually has emotional impact. I love that. And the other thing, and this will probably piss Gwen off. Sorry, Steve, but apparently Chris and Gary are not shippers because they addressed the whole Jin and Cassian thing and would they have hooked up and why didn't they hook up? And basically they said it wasn't needed. They saw no point in romance being added to this. They thought the stakes and the bond that they had was already strong enough.
Well, yeah, in Rogue One, that makes perfect sense. In the sequel trilogy with 3 movies and the fact that you kind of insinuated it from the first movie on, it kind of made sense to not lead it to that, honestly.
See, I don't even think they insinuated it. I mean, it was Kylo Ren was a bad guy. Rey was a good guy. Okay. And the people, how they totally insinuated that they were hooking up. Like, where?
Well, no, and nobody's. I mean, if anybody's saying they took it that far, they're idiots. But if you're trying to say that there was no type of insinuation that there was something between the two of them, not so much that they were hooking up, but that there was just some type of spark between them, you're kind of crazy.
I probably just wasn't looking for it. I'm not saying it's not there, but
I mean, and then it was shoved down your fucking throat in the second movie with all the damn going into each other's minds and everything. So I mean, in the third movie, you almost had to go for it.
See, that I really didn't see. That I just thought it was like some new force power that hadn't been explored before, and it was, they're both like, holy crap, what are we doing? It was like experimentation in the force. I got zero romance out of that personally.
Again, you're looking too much into it by claiming romance. So I'm saying just a spark. The fact that they were trying to touch each other, the fact, all that stuff was just like a little. It's not saying that they were going to hook up, but a fact that they were starting to connect with each other. Not so much in a sexual way, but just that they were connecting with each other. That's all.
I didn't see that. Again, I saw it as experimenting with the force. Like, okay, like I could see your hand, you could see mine. Can we actually like touch? Is it like, can we like actually have a physical connection? Like, even though we're like forever and a day away from each other, like,
and then Kylo constantly trying to get her to take his hand and everything else, and her saying that she saw into the future that she was going to lead by his side and all that. And like, it was, like I said, it was just kind of shoved down your throat in the second movie.
So you could tell you live with a Reylo because I didn't get any of that out of it.
Yeah.
And all you got to do is listen to the movie. I mean, it's all kind of clear as day, honestly.
But isn't it funny that like these two movies exist in the same franchise, but they made entirely different choices with similar situations?
And again, I think it's just the fact of one movie versus 3, though. I mean, it would have been incredibly ridiculous to shove any kind of romantic thing into Rogue One on top of everything else when you only had, 2 hours to work with as opposed to 6, 8, however long, the 3 sequel trilogy movies are added together.
See, I disagree because I felt like it was very strongly implied in Rogue One that those two would totally hook up, and they just didn't because circumstances dictated that there wasn't time. So that was where it would have made sense if they had wanted to go that way, and they chose not to. And I think conversely, when you got 3 movies to build a connection between characters, you don't need to go that direction at the end.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, again, I've mentioned it before. They did it.
Am I the only one that's ever been friend zoned before? I mean, come on.
Well, I mean, go back and watch the other 6 movies. There was romance stuff in the original trilogy. There was romance stuff in the prequel trilogy. So, of course, they were going to add it into the new one, too.
Yeah, but I mean, that was more stock. that was, a good guy. It was like, Padme and Anakin and Han and Leia. It wasn't like,
So they gave you a change, which is what everybody was complaining that they didn't get out of episode 7.
yeah, no, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, that's very true. I just, again, people that say it was blatant, I personally didn't see it, because to me the blatant is Han and Leia. It's not Kylo and Rey. It's like I got the same thing out of Rogue One with the romance thing. I never saw anything like that. To me it was,
Yeah, I don't think it made
fighting
any sense in Rogue One. I mean, what was she going to do? Jump on his junk on the damn beach while watching the stupid mushroom cloud roll in?
Yeah, right. he grabs a boob right
Yeah.
before they're about to be died. She goes, seriously?
Yeah.
And then
Last
everything just
second
turns to
on
white
Earth,
light.
Cassian just turns into a sexual predator right on his way out the door. That would have been a great storyline.
Cops a feel right before he's gonna be turned into dust. Yeah. No, I just like
Well,
even,
if ever
even when
there's
they
a
got
time, I mean, come on.
yeah, you can't get slapped or anything.
They're both watching the mushroom cloud roll in. He just reaches over and goes, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Nice. Yeah, I don't know. Even when like they were kind of close, like face to face in the hangar on Yavin, and he's like, "Welcome home" or whatever. Or like even then, I didn't think that it was like I didn't think there was anything there. I just thought it was like two people that are absolutely fighting, tooth and nail for this cause. And it was like a friendship kind of a thing and, respect thing. And they specifically said in the commentary last night that, that's what they were going for. That is like as drafts went further and further and revisions were made, like the anything relating to romance got less and less and less until all that was left was just this respect, like a military, respect, and they just appreciated the resolve.
Well, according
the other
to
one
the
had for
people
the cause.
who hate on episode 9, if it was a respect thing, they should have started making out at the end of the movie, right?
Not even getting into that again. That's
I know, that's the worst damn hot take in Star Wars. That's the most annoying thing in the world, honestly.
yeah. It's so difficult, man, because like this whole lockdown quarantine thing has been crazy because you really see where the crap part of fandom is, and then we can close up shop after that unless you got something else, AJ. But I've done a couple podcaster hangouts where a couple other shows like Followers of the Force and Jedi Temple Archives and stuff like that, Canon Cantina, we all get together and we come up with a topic, and we kind of go back and forth. It's just a bunch of podcasters doing a podcast, and it's really informative, and it's a lot of fun, super positive. It's it's like meeting up somebody at Celebration at random. And then stuff like last night where you hear these guys talking about it and how much they love Star Wars, and they write the stuff because they're fans, and all the little things they put in there just because that's what they'd want to see. And I've had some interactions with people online recently about the show and about Star Wars. It's really cool. And then but then if you just scroll through a Twitter timeline, it's like a wasteland, and it's like, oh man, it's so crazy because it's really becoming more and more evident that like Star Wars Twitter is where you just don't go if you want positivity. I mean, I was in a big long discussion the other day in a Facebook group about Celebration, and totally disagreed with somebody, and we just were conversing back and forth. It wasn't name calling and all this other stuff. It was just, kind of making points and having a conversation about something we didn't agree on. And you don't see that on Twitter. Twitter's just people screaming at each other.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so bad.
I just read something online the other day. Daisy Ridley had done an interview with somebody or whatever, and they were asking her about, what she thinks or felt about, the negative stuff going towards the sequel trilogy and stuff. And she had even mentioned, she was like, I don't get it. Where did all the love for Star Wars go? And it's like, what, if you think about it, the majority of Star Wars fans, honest to God, hate every damn movie.
Only the online segment. I will phrase it that way.
Yeah, but even the people who love the movies hate the movies. It might just be the vocal minority and stuff like that like to run their mouth, but it's like you almost want to look at Daisy and go like, are you brand new to this? Like,
Well,
it's
it's
a shame it has to be that way. It's just how it is, though. Like you said, it's just how the internet friggin' works. That's all.
Yeah, and bringing it all back to my, one of my very first points. That's why I hope they do more of this, because it was really cool to hear all these little details and the behind the scenes of why they wrote certain things. And I think if they were to do something like this with something like The Last Jedi or The Rise of Skywalker or something, maybe some people would be like, oh, that actually gives me a new spin on this. This is pretty cool. So I hope they do that. So you got anything else, AJ?
Just that based on the calendar, our next episode will be coming out the day that hopefully I am building the newly released Lego Star Wars Ultimate Collector Series A-Wing, since it comes out 2 days before my birthday. I'm
That's
not even
awesome.
asking for it for my birthday. I'm buying it myself, and I'm going to build the crap out of that thing.
How much are they retailing that for?
It's $200, same as always, which is a little pricey for the piece count, but I don't care. It's an A-Wing, and you know how long I've been wanting one of those. That's my favorite ship.
$200. Wow.
It's 1,600 or 1,700 pieces, so it's a little pricey, but that's the going rate for Star Wars now. I mean, the Star Destroyer is $700, so
wow.
Comparatively, this is a bargain.
Well, it looks awesome. I mean, and you sent that picture to us before the show. That does look great. So, but awesome. Well, yeah, Steve, this is going to be on YouTube, the IGN thing, if it's not already. At least I think it is. And if it is, you and Gwen should totally check it out. It's really informative. So,
yeah, if it's up there, I'm gonna have to check it out.
Yeah.
Plus, I asked 2 questions and they both got answered on the stream. So, yay.
AJ's all famous and stuff now, so yeah. But
Well, now we can add another 3 subscribers to the show.
We're up to listener 27. So yeah, but anybody listening, highly recommend checking that out. You have to have the movie playing on one device and then the YouTube on another, and then you just sync them up, which took me a minute or two, but you can do it. It's easy. So, but yeah, definitely check it out. It's very interesting. So, thanks for checking out another episode of the Nerf Herder Council. We're brought to you by Audible. Go to audibletrial.com/NHC for a 30-day trial and a free audiobook download. You can get your own customized Nerf Herder Council swag at shop.nerfherdercouncil.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us all of our episodes are on YouTube. The website is nerfherdercouncil.com. If you're looking for us on podcast apps, we're pretty much everywhere. So Spreaker, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, all those good places. And we are very active on our Twitter page, which is at NHC Podcast. So go there, have a conversation with us, and don't be an online a-hole, because we don't like those people. So anyway, till next time, I am your host, JT at Dog Pound Jedi. He's AJ.
At Drake Adams 579.
He's Steve.
At JSteve1005.
And we will catch you next time.
Bucket of bolts is never gonna get us past that blockade.
This bucket's got a few surprises left in her. Plus, me and Chewie are on it. Ain't that right, Chewie?
Hell yeah, you my Nerf herder.
You my Nerf herder.
I'm prepared.